Top of the morning to you.
Coming to you from Party Central.
The ugliest Are you still in the ugliest county in America?
I am still in the ugliest county in America.
Party Central.
Just
It's a whole long story.
hilarious.
I mean, we've talked about it in episodes past, but
Yeah. It's still funny. I mean, it's just funny
it's
all the
pretty
time.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, well,
Good morning, folks.
it's morning.
CK, Dave.
We have to
It's
roll out
morning.
of bed and talk about partying.
Right. So this is episode 2, and in this series on Dance Revolution. And I'm Daniel Walpert. I direct MICA, the Minnesota Institute of Contemplation and Healing.
I'm Ashton Suk. I direct the Center for Party Revolution. No. Prophetic Imagination.
For Center for Party International.
Yes.
Right? CPI.
Yeah. It's also
Yeah.
a possibility. This is our series. We're talking about the necessity of celebration, joy, pleasure, partying, kind of those things within the context. Within the context of like being revolutionarily minded people, but also spiritual people. And in both those contexts, party is not. If there's two groups of people that we think about as being glum, it's going to be far leftists and super religious people.
Right. Yeah.
And then what if you're both? Then you just have to feel like shit all the time. And if you feel any joy at all, it's like I remember one time, I remember one time I went over to a friend's house, and I'm known as anti-capitalist, blah, blah, blah. And they had a brand new big flat screen TV and a PlayStation. And I walk in and I don't care. I mean, it's not like that's like I'm going to sit around and judge that, but they're like, oh, I'm sorry. They started apologizing for their flat screen TV.
Right.
And I mean, yes, there's a critique to be made for consumer electronic, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that there's this assumption that if you're very religious, very spiritual, or very radical, that you're just judgy and you cannot loosen up and enjoy things because it's impossible to enjoy anything in a way that's perfect.
Right. Well, and I just had a really funny example of this the other day. Deborah and I were at this brewery and we were sitting outside in the patio, and this couple next to us they were talking about the ELCA, Lutheran churches, and they were actually sort of trying to remember what ELCA stood for, and so I'm overhearing this, and so I just started talking to them. I didn't even tell them what I did, but it was just started talking about Lutheranism, and I guess his parents were Missouri Synod Lutherans, and then at some point the guy was like, talking about religion at a bar, like that's weird.
Yeah.
Right, which is kind of the reaction that I get all the time. Like if I'm at a bar or someplace and people find out I'm a pastor, they start being all weird. They like make excuses for their drinking. They stop cussing. Yeah. And I remember once being at the Fargo Blues Festival and this really drunk guy was next to us and found out I was a pastor, and he like starts crying and talking about all the problems in his life and why is he drunk at this blues festival, and yeah, so it clearly is ingrained in people's minds, right? That some of these things, religion, far leftists, whatever, critique of consumerism, like don't fit with having fun. Which is incredibly sad, right? I mean, it really is incredibly sad. And
to me, there's this perfect storm of things. Like one, there's the Christian, which then spills over into Western society in general, kind of suspicion of bodily pleasure, and then also tied in with that is a sort of like suspicion of emotionality, a privileging of rationality, which all that's bullshit. I mean, it's not like your thoughts are detached from your feelings and that, like there's just all kinds of stuff that's messed up with that. But then you tie into that like this sort of Protestant work ethic that really you're supposed to work as hard as possible. And that filters into non-Christian spaces too. Like, I mean, we all in this society feel the thumb pressing down on us that we have to work harder and better in order to feel like a good person. That's kind of part of the script of our society.
Yep.
So it like leaves you with this sort of like, okay, if I even know that I need to like lighten up and party, I don't even know how. So it's, I remember going to, I like Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler. And so this friend of mine who's older, because Mark Knopfler is, I mean, that's like music from the 80s. And I was like a child, very little child. So like, hey, come with me to this concert. So I go to this concert, Mark Knopfler playing, and I'm one of the youngest people there. And I'm not a spring chicken, as they say. But and it was weird watching all these people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who probably haven't partied much because they're mostly white in their life, trying to now suddenly party. Like, so watching middle-aged people who haven't danced in a long time dance for the first time is an awkward spectacle. And I feel like, and I don't want to make fun of that too much, but it's like, to me, that's a snapshot in my mind of the difficulty that many of us have. Is like, I don't even know how to enjoy myself in a way that is liberatory and free, that doesn't feel awkward and forced, unless I get drunk first.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, at least they were trying to dance. Yeah. I mean, I've been to some of those shows, and most people aren't even trying.
They're just sitting there.
They're just sitting there.
Yeah. Going to concerts where people are just sitting there is really weird feeling.
It's very strange. Yeah. Well, and so then you have this thing that's happening now, which I think is very connected to all of this. And I find, totally fascinating, given, again, where I grew up and when I grew up, is this explosion of psychedelics. Right. And so, for those of you who are not aware of this, I mean, the whole industry and the use of psychedelics in therapy and regular life and personal growth and development is absolutely going crazy. I mean, I'm just blown away by what is happening. And so you have everything from little groups of people getting together to talk about how to do psychedelics in a helpful way, to now there's massive there's FDA studies underway, there's whole centers of psychedelic studies popping up in big academic institutions, and then if you just Google this, you'll find it. I mean, there's now this massive industry of people going to Mexico, Central, South America, to be with, the approved wise shaman, and, for only $5,000, you too can become enlightened, in this beautiful, perfect place. And, you have these testimonies like, my anxiety's gone. I just saw one this morning. I mean, this is on my Facebook page every day. My anxiety is gone. I came back as a new person. And I think that all of this really simply points to the truth that the dominant white society and culture, and the dominant capitalist society and culture that has been given to us is deeply diseased and makes people deeply diseased. And they have this incredible desire to get out of that, right? And to escape from it. And I mean, on the one hand, it's great that people are trying. But on the other hand, to me, it's very problematic that a lot of that is going on without also recognizing what the source of the problem is, right? Because oftentimes the source of the problem is the same kind of individualistic thing where people are just saying, well, I don't feel so good. And no critique about what's going on in society at large.
Yeah. There's a couple comments here from Ellen, who says, good morning. Good morning,
Ellen.
As an unschooled kid, I played outside for hours every day. Now, when I substitute teach in schools where kids spend an average of 7 minutes outside per day, relating to how to have fun is bizarre. Oh my God, that's a whole other thing. Like, and I don't want to be the old timer who's like laments screen culture, but
go for it.
It is weird. Like, and I also don't want to idealize the past because I had a messed up childhood, but at the same time, you give a kid just hours outside, they figure out things to do, and there's a lot of creativity and play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, and I think anyone can kind of get into that. Like, I don't think I think it wouldn't take long for a kid to start like learning that, because I think it's built into how we are. But like, there's something habitual. The habitual screen stuff makes it hard for us to know how to be creative and play. I don't want to come down too hard on that, but it's
well,
sad.
and the thing, I mean, to me, it's not just the screen stuff. It's also the highly organized, regimented activity scene.
Yes.
Right. And so that also really stifles a lot of this. Okay, Ellen continues.
When I was in Mennonite voluntary service, we used to have fun dance parties. When we hosted a Mennonite man from the Congo, he took one look at the dancing and said, shaking his head, "This is not Mennonite style."
Yeah, so I mean, I'd love to hear more about kind of what he meant by that. So was he concerned that you guys were dancing, or did he just think that you were being different because most of the Mennonites he'd met would not dance? So
I want to know more backstory.
Yeah.
Ellen also says, actually, I think there's some truth to this. Like, I heard that only 80% of seminary students become pastors, but 100% of seminary students who do shrooms become pastors. I actually met a guy who was an atheist who did acid and then met God and became a Bible scholar. So there is something to, like, I'm not anti, like, neither Dan nor I are against the bounty of the earth to expand the mind, but but there's something about the way we do it. Like, it's still in the capitalist mode of colonization and appropriation. We see a lot, and so like it's like, I mean, yeah, if you start thinking about like, what's a European,
I want to know where Ellen got that statistic.
Yeah, please cite the study. But like, this is the question. Like, what does it mean to party well? Does that mean like do I have to dress up in lederhosen and go to a beer hall in order to party well? Is that like, what does it mean?
You could. Yeah.
Actually, that does sound like fun.
Yeah.
But the question of like, it's interesting to me that in all these spiritual places, people they'll fly to Albuquerque to sit with Richard Rohr to learn how to do contemplative practice. And do all this stuff, and they'll put all this money in. Like, they'll go on a pilgrimage, they'll do all this stuff, and then like but to me, I think people assume that partying is just this sort of natural thing that you do, that you don't. There's the idea of partying well never crosses someone's mind, because in our society, it's like a great example is if I invite people out to karaoke. Oftentimes they'll say, "Well, I don't know if I don't want to come, but I guess if I got a little bit drunk first, I can maybe engage in karaoke." Like, that's kind of a joking statement a lot of people say, and that's fair. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not against people getting
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. But there's this idea that somehow there's this recognition of this barrier. I don't know how to have fun, and so I have to figure out how to get reckless through chemical substances in order to learn how to have fun, because it is so not at my disposal. is kind of the underlying thing. Now, if singing, that's different. It's performative, and there's some stage stuff with that. That's fine. But I feel like a lot of people are like that in general. Like we don't even. And if we start thinking about parties, like the stereotypical 80s, 90s, 2000s film of high schoolers going to a party and it's socially awkward and they sit in a corner on a couch and they try to hook up. Like that's what we think of as a party. And that's like such a weird, sad container for thinking of parties about. Like, what do you do? Laura says, good morning.
Hey, Laura's live today with us. Greetings.
Ellen says, he didn't think we could be Mennonites because of dancing like that. Were you dancing a little bit like, were you enjoying your bodies too much? That's my that's the subtext.
Well, yeah. I mean, so again, that's a very, very interesting story to me in terms of colonialism and cultural oppression. Right. So here's somebody from Africa, where there's an incredible history of, music, dancing, rejoicing, celebrating, ceremony, partying on many kinds of levels. And now, after hundreds of years of colonization, he has met Mennonites and has decided, like, oh yeah, these are these uptight people that don't dance. And, I don't know if he was thinking that he shouldn't be dancing like that anymore. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he didn't think that was Mennonite-like.
Well, my sense from the story is that either he was converted into being a Mennonite, or maybe he was raised in a Congolese Mennonite family and probably said, this is the way. And that, this colonization thing is a bummer. I don't know what to say about that. My seminarian student friend told me about the psilocybin thing. I will have to ask her. She is a pastor now, meaning she did shrooms. That's like we understand to connect the dots there. Susan writes, I party like a fool at home. No inebriation needed. Nice. Dancing and singing. I don't make a public spectacle of myself usually, though. Introvert. Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like, there's all kinds of ways to party. And I like what you brought up a few minutes ago, Dan. Like, traditionally, things like ceremony and spirituality and stuff it was all connected in with partying.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't
together.
Part of the bad hangover of the kind of secularism project and the way we've thought about enlightenment is that these things are separate. And then we also assume that the further back you go, the more conservative people are religiously. And so it'd be shocking for people to travel back to the Middle Ages during festival days. There are religious festivals that are bordering on orgiatic.
Yeah, religious festivals, nature festivals, right? Different times of year. The whole like maypole thing is maybe one thing that people have heard about, right? I mean, that was all a spring fertility rite, and it was lots of partying, lots of sex, lots of all kinds of stuff.
I don't know how to tell people. Mardi Gras is a Christian festival.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we might think of it that way.
Well, and it's a Christian festival that also is combined with all kinds of African indigenous traditional festivals and appropriations and amalgamations and
and that's another piece of it. So you have these different carnival traditions and the Parade of Fools and stuff. There's always this kind of bringing in of non-Christian influences, and this is another piece. This is, to me, part of the Protestant hangover, is that we think there's a pure Christianity that's free from corruption from outside forces, which ironically Catholics don't think of as much.
No. And
so we want to like bake in a clean, pure, antiseptic Christianity that's free from influences, and it cuts off all the fun stuff. Kathleen writes, I hate parties because I feel self-conscious and don't know what to do. I hate small talk, and my dance experience has been limited to formal ballroom. Right. Ballroom dancing is fun.
Well, and Kathleen, this is, I think, a great example, right? Is that, and we talk all the time about formation, right? And so when you're formed in the WASP culture, that does not have this incredible, rich reality of celebration, of ceremony, of sacred parties, of profane parties, of doing all kinds of fun stuff, then what gets defined as a party is like, many people's first experience of a party is either some weird like cocktail party at home, or um, a bad Thanksgiving family experience, and then a high school dance or a junior high school dance,
Oh
right?
God, which is it's like awkward 101.
Well, exactly, and it's very fascinating that culturally, right? So you have these adults that don't really know how to have a party, and so then they're like, well, okay, you're now a little teenager, you should have a dance. And so then, all these little kids go to this thing and they're like, we don't know what the fuck to do. Like, so I'm just going to stand here feeling weird and maybe something will happen. And yeah, I hope I don't do something stupid, which I probably will. And so, that, right. I mean, that's the formation for partying in our culture. And again, if you think about a different kind of social setting where there's, ceremonies and parties all the time. I mean, as a kid, you grow up in that, and you're very comfortable, right? This is part of life, and
There's this awkward forced thing.
yeah, that you have no idea how to do because you've never seen anybody doing it, and it's pretty clear that it's not supposed to be fun because the adults in your life don't do it anymore. And so it's like, hopefully I'll make it through to prom and not be too humiliated.
It's funny, like, I'm assuming a lot of people have had this experience because there's a long history to this that's fascinating. It's tied up in white supremacist culture and everything. But like in Phi Ed class growing up, we did square dancing. Right. Okay. A lot of people across the United States had this because there was this actual campaign by like conservatives to introduce square dancing as part of white heritage across the United States. And so, like, think about this. Like, I never danced before. All of a sudden, I'm learning how to square dance in like school. And then there's high school dance, and it's like you're awkward. And then all of a sudden, you're going to parties where it's small talk and alcohol and just sitting there. None of those are really, like, part of it's like my thought about what you're writing, Kathleen, is like, one, we're not enculturated to party well, but then the idea of what we think of as a party is pretty sad. Like, is it sitting in a house with a lot of alcohol and like dance music? Is that what a party is? Well, there's all kinds of, like, going to different weddings from different cultures is fascinating. Where you're doing like kind of the East African Shigoye dance, and it's more like everyone's dancing the same style of dance together, and it's easier for me to do that, even though I don't know what the hell how to do it, because everyone's doing it together. Versus when you go to your typical U.S. style dance, which everyone does their own kind of moves, and it's all about, do I look like an idiot? And you have to be willing to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Which I'm willing to look like an idiot. I embarrass my friends at dance parties.
Yeah. All right.
Victoria says, did you just say big, huge? I'm assuming I said that because that seems like the sort of thing that I would.
Big, huge something.
Probably like a big, huge party. Maybe huge. I said that. I do that sort of thing.
I don't know. Yes, is that a funny thing to say?
I mean, it's just redundant. I like to stack my words sometimes.
Well, that's
how I like to party.
You're emphasizing how huge it is.
It's like super duper big, huge,
Huge, right? Super duper.
Neil writes, I don't drink much, just a sip of wine on Sunday morning usually. But I've been accused of being drunk on the dance floor. I always feel proud in those moments.
Yeah.
Solidarity.
Rock on, Neil.
Neil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ellen writes, the first parties I remember were my 5th birthday at a Chuck E. Cheese. Yes.
Yeah.
My
Sure.
friend's costume party. Animatronic band.
Yeah.
Singing
Good
bear.
old Chuck E.
and
Cheese.
Mouse. Yeah. Catherine writes, sounds like what y'all are saying is we have to fight for a right to party.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Indeed, in the words of the prophets, we have to fight for the right to party. Donna writes, not just African rituals, but also South American and Gola, Black American spirituality and Aramaic, like Neil David Klotz's body prayer and Sufi. For sure, there's lots. Sufi is a great example of that because Sufism is controversial within, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff within Islam, but the idea that the highest form of worship might be dancing is kind of a beautiful idea. Party is simply an expression of embodied joy. Yes.
Yeah.
And yes, many of us Catholics have no problem with incarnational joy, especially as Dominicans.
Right.
And I'm not saying that every Catholic knows how to party better than a Protestant, but there's something there.
There is a lot to that. Yeah, I mean, when Deborah and I were traveling around the world, I particularly remember this one Catholic church that we went to. It was in the Tahitian island chain. It wasn't Tahiti, but it was one of the smaller islands. And there were these churches around the island, and there was only one priest. And so the priest would come and do the mass. And then these 2 young guys with electric guitars with these tiny little amps got up there, and then we just danced for like an hour. and that was the church service, right? And it was so great and so fun and wonderful, and it was this really beautiful thing. And again, it was just, this was a very natural part of what this worship experience was about. Yeah.
This brings up an important nuance. Catherine writes, I'm super clumsy, like a form of neurodivergence, but love moving my body to music. What makes it unfun is not being bad at dancing, but being judged for not moving like others. With an accepting crowd for friends, I have a blast. I mean, that's a big part of it. The thing that makes it hard for a lot of people, and again, this ties into Protestant work ethic, capitalism, is that dance is seen as a performative thing you have to do well. Same for singing. Like, why people don't like karaoke isn't because they're bad at singing. It's because they're made to, like, they feel like they need to be good in a certain way at singing.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's very interesting to me is that this is a ubiquitous thing across the arts in general, right? So, you know, one of the things that I have done a lot of, that we do a lot of at Micah, is you know, visual art related prayer practices. And you know, people have the exact same issue with visual arts, right? Somewhere in 2nd or 3rd grade, they had some nasty teacher that told them they were bad at art, right? They got a D in art class or something, and they're convinced that they're not an artist, and they feel bad, and they feel like their drawings don't look good, and they can't do this. And so, you know, we have to do all kinds of preparation to sort of clear the air of that judgmentalism and that internalized repression for people to feel comfortable about doing creative prayer practices. I mean, I will even joke that we have a table full of non-art supplies, right? so that, you know, just don't worry about being an artist. And whether it's singing, whether it's dancing, whether it's art, all of these things, this judgmentalism of this oppressive system that we're all a part of, you know, tells us don't engage in these embodied, you know, Donna, as you're saying, these embodied expressions of joy. And it, you know, and I think it's very connected to socio-political control, right? Because when you're creative and can sing and dance and do art, I mean, that can become very subversive. And so to have this sort of zombified, cowed public is helpful for the powers that be.
Yep. Ellen writes, I've heard a person at a Mennonite church saying we should not have a party team. We should call the team a hospitality committee. God, that's the Mennoniteest thing ever.
Yeah.
Because party implies drugs.
Yeah, sure.
Victoria writes, CK gets embarrassed when I roll the dice and do the sprinkler. What
All
about the butter churn? I'm a fan of the butter churn.
Yeah, the butter churn.
Or the cabbage patch. I've heard it be called that. I don't know why it's called that.
Do the twist.
Yeah. And what's the sprinkler's this, but then there's the one where you pull your knee up like Vanilla Ice. That's a classic move. We should
do all the moves. Come on, CK. gotta let your wife do the moves.
Donna writes, sadly, enculturation seems to be mostly a Catholic thing. Communal dancing is an expression of the Trinity, i.e. the divine dance. Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole conversation about that. Like, and I'm just can imagine there's some upset Lutherans out there who are like, we can dance and party. I'm just not going to touch that one.
Yeah.
Ellen writes,
you skipped
Dave. Yeah, my coworkers at the preschool think a party should be named after the activity: pizza party, dance party, pajama party, communist party. Yeah. Ellen writes, yet I bet you never heard someone say, wow, you're so good at walking. You are the best walker out of all your friends. I don't know. I'm a pretty good walker. It depends.
Yeah. Well, if you're into like speed walking at the Olympics where you really move your hips, that can lead to dancing and all kinds of weird things. Yeah.
Dave writes, birthday party is a code word for cupcake party to preschoolers. Oh, for sure. There's gonna be cake. Cupcake is the best. Then it's individualized and everyone gets the same portion. So yeah, they know what's up. Ellen writes, if you ask a room full of 5-year-olds who's an artist, they all raise their hands. Ask high schoolers, maybe 1 or 2 will say they're an artist. And art has become a big part of their identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that has something to do with capitalism and the kind of every division of labor, the way identity formation works in an individualized way. It's just, there's so much at play here that gets us off track from being able just to party well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true about kids and dancing, right? I mean, I'm sure we've all seen this. You put on music, you put on good music to dance to in almost any setting with kids around, and kids just start dancing. Like they just start moving their bodies, right? And it's only when they get told not to, or people draw too much attention to it, and they learn like, oh, this isn't really something I'm supposed to do. So they kind of stop. So
here's I can end with a little story.
Yeah,
Jonas does not like dancing or anything like that now. But I remember when he was like 3 or 4. A week before we had driven home where we were trying to drive in front of a tornado front, and the sky was really dark. And so I said, wow, that looks ominous. Week or so later, we're standing in line to get a coffee at Peace Coffee, which was by our house at the time. And little 3-year-old Jonas is like, he's just doing this. And I'm like, the coffee person was like, what are you doing? He's like, this is called the ominous man. So he created this dance move, free association style, like the pure creativity and fun of that.
Nice. Yeah.
Like, there's no reason we have to stop having that sort of free associative fun and creativity all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, find your ominous man, friends. Stay thirsty.
Yeah. All right. Well, rock on. Yeah. Have a great party day.
Yeah, Wednesday is hump day.
We'll be back on Friday.
See you Friday, everybody.
All right, bye.
Fascism Friday.